like to bring us to order. It's 5:30 and it's time to start the May 11th meeting of the Eugene City Budget Committee. Just a couple of things to note. This evening, I've been told we will not be broadcast. Is that correct? Because, again, we're conflicting with the Lane County Budget Committee meetings, and they get priority, I guess, on getting broadcast on cable access. However, it will be put up on the web later. And then just a note on your memo that's before you right now, there was a typo in the text there regarding the May 17th meeting. Again, that meeting will not be televised or recorded for later broadcast, so the only record of that meeting will be the minutes from the meeting, so I just wanted to call that to your attention. It will be tape recorded to help assist in those minutes being as accurate as possible. And then I just wanted to say tonight we're going to get another presentation on downtown, and then we'll have time for Q&A and a break, and we'll continue discussion. If anyone is wanting to discuss intended motions, it's fine to start that tonight. We can also start sending those out via email in anticipation of next week's meetings, which will be a fairly full agenda on a fairly tight schedule. We'll be getting the multi-year financial forecast as well as having the public hearing. And then we'll hopefully get into motions that evening, next Tuesday. Any questions about that? All right. So this is, then I'll move into public comment. And right now we have one person signed up for public comment. If you're here and would like to provide, I'm sorry, Councilor Farr?
Not a comment, just an announcement. There is a conflicting meeting tonight with the Bethel Community Center, the upcoming potential YMCA, and I'm going to be looking for that meeting.
Okay.
About 6:30.
Okay, thanks for letting us know. If you are here and would like to provide public comment and you haven't yet filled out one of these pink forms, if you could do so and turn it into Mia up here at the desk, that would be great. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on budget priorities. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person, and Budget Committee members may ask clarifying questions of those testifying and will be given an opportunity to comment on what they've heard from the public at the end of the public comment time. And I have Juan Carlos Valle signed up to speak. And Juan Carlos, if you'd like to come join us at the table.
I'm going to see if I can stop coughing for a few minutes. Madam Chair, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Juan Carlos Valle. I live in South Eugene. I'm in Betty Taylor's ward. As the Vice Chair of the Police Commission, you have seen me advocating for police resources and support. I still have that interest in making sure that resources for public safety is considered. Tonight, however, I'm here to represent Centro Latinoamericano as the board president. Centro Latinoamericano continues to be the only agency that provides linguistic and culturally appropriate services to low-income families and Spanish-speaking individuals. As you go on with the amazing and at times agonizing work in deciding which areas need support with services, I am confident that you will make recommendations based on priorities and make well-rounded and educated recommendations. One of the recommendations you'll be making is to send a large amount of money and resources to Lane County and to the Human Services Commission. I appreciate and honor the partnerships to be able to address the needs of our senior population, our homeless population, and to low-income families. And of course, that includes Spanish-speaking families and individuals. The partnership is supposed to be a secure access to basic services and to also secure a better quality of life for residents. That, in fact, is what separates our city from others. Some of this work is done via Human Services Commission, and with your blessing, I'm here to ask you to consider reviewing the type of mechanism and the kind of reporting elements you get back from the county in terms of how our money is spent. You need to get a complete and accurate account how it was spent, how it was used. Today, they need to find mechanisms and partnerships to enable our city to satisfy basic needs for our population is even greater. Again, I ask that you consider how those partnerships are formed and whether a direct partnership with providers might be of greater impact, and to hear directly from the agencies how their work positively affects our city. I was told once, show me your budget, and I will tell you priorities. You will indeed show me what your priorities are. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Is anyone wishing to speak at public comment? Nope. All right. I'll close our public comment time then. Any comments or questions from committee members? Nope. And then I misspoke when I opened the meeting and said we were not being broadcast this evening. We are currently being broadcast on Metro TV. So adjust your attitude accordingly.
Just your attitude.
All right. So, and I'm going to turn things over to Sarah. I don't know if you're going to introduce the next presentation.
Oh, am I doing that?
I don't know.
Yep, I'm going to do that. So tonight we're going to talk about downtown, and we've been approaching downtown really as broadly as an organization, as there's really no one element that's not connected to something else. So tonight, myself, Renee Gruby, and Pete Kearns are going to kind of split this up, tag team it, so you get 3 for the price of 1. Let me just turn this on. All right.
Sarah, before you start, just a reminder to try to speak as close to the microphone as possible so we can all hear.
Got it. All right. So I put this drawing up there mostly because we all think about downtown in different ways. If you read the Register Guard, sometimes you'll read about things that are at Washington Jefferson Park and described as downtown. And so we all have a different idea. This plan and this boundary was included in the 2004 downtown plan, which is the most recently adopted plan that we have. And so I just use it as a kind of a context of the area we're talking about when we're talking about tonight's investments. Interesting, that plan in 2004 had 2 main kind of themes that ran through almost every one of the different implementations, and it was to reinforce downtown as a strong regional center and to strengthen downtown as a cultural center and center of community life. It kind of highlighted a broad spectrum of things that needed to be done, from infrastructure issues, signage, different connections, public safety, and investments in arts and culture. So it's kind of a nice backdrop to what we'll be talking about tonight. Oh, this is interesting. The coloring is really bad. Sorry about that. So what you're seeing here is we came and talked to you about Eugene counts a couple years ago and talked about how we had taken, and the council had directed us really to take their goal statements, their vision and goal statements, go out to the community and say, okay, if we're doing these things on safe community and sustainable development, what kind of outcomes do you need to see? And what you're seeing right there in green are the things that were heard the loudest through that process, through neighborhood surveys and the community survey, and ultimately the things that the council adopted. The dark green ones are actually the ones that I thought were most relevant to downtown. There's some lighter green ones that you can't see, and we can send them to you if you need an update. But really, you'll see there's a lot of focus on downtown in our council priorities. As part of that process, we took a lot of direct words and statements, and so these are just a sampling of things, and the last one being do something, anything to promote downtown.
Free park.
So a couple of investments I'm going to start off talking about, and we've talked about quite a lot, is parking and free parking and different things we've done to encourage people. So in 2010, October actually, was the beginning of a 2-year period where we said we're going to do a 12-block radius of free parking downtown. So we took out 288 meters and put up these 2-hour signs that you see, installed a bunch of new bicycle hoops that are really attractive, and said, this is a way we can really invite people to come back down, rediscover downtown, and remove any real or perceived barriers to doing that by the parking program. What that equated to was a loss in revenue. So some people will say, we lost revenue for 2 years, because it's over a 2-year period, a $440,000 loss of meter revenue. But we feel like that's a really important investment in downtown to try to keep growing the things that are happening. Some other investments we've done in the same area is we bumped up our parking garage safety pretty significantly. when we were having reports of concerns, break-ins, and garages, and wanted people to feel really safe, so we've invested in that. We've made things easier. We've started to install credit card and pay-by-cell apps and done some really good work on rebranding and making it clear that it's easy to park in Eugene. And we've also continued all the normal things we've done, which is free after hours, free on Saturdays. So we think this is a part of an important step in downtown. There's been some great projects popping up around, and this is one that we've all had kind of graphically on our radars for a while. And that is the Center Court building. It's now called the Broadway Commerce Center, and we call it anything from Center Court to Beam and on. But it's right at the corner of Willamette and Broadway. And here it is just last week. Oops, sorry, that is bad. So the Beam Center, the Broadway Commerce Center, will ultimately be a 10,000 square foot retail space with 43,000 square feet of office space above that. And this project is so significant because at the time we're in economically, it took a lot of really creative ways to get this funded and built. So there is, Mike Sullivan's here. He can always speak to the details of how we did it. But through the Urban Renewal Agency and the City of Eugene, through a number of mechanisms, we ultimately loaned around $9 million that will all eventually be paid back to get this important icon on the corner moving forward. Another site that has been clipping right along is the site right next to that. So we were just looking at this building, and this is the Bennett project. So the owners of the Downtown Athletic Club, they are moving along here. And you can see that I think we just broke ground on this a couple of months ago, and they've already got concrete poured and really fast progress. So it's pretty exciting to see that happening. A few details on that. This will be a 5-story office and retail building with about 50,000 square feet. Also, a number of different loan amounts to help them fund this. In addition, one of the things I think is a city thing is we agreed to backstop part of the leasing. So we have said if they can't get tenants in, that there's a portion of that we will lease if necessary to ensure they could get the financing that they needed. Hopefully this time next year, when you look out the window, there'll be substantial completion on this LCC new building downtown. This is going to, you can just imagine how exciting it's going to be to have this in the library back and forth across the street. It's a pretty amazing building. And it, too, broke ground on March 4th, which is a great day because they are marching forth. They are building a 90,000 square foot, $35 million education building. Associated with that will be a $20 million student housing facility. So we'll have a significant number of new housing units downtown. And this was helped to be funded through the Urban Renewal Agency. As you remember, last year we updated that plan and we committed up to $8 million for this project. And last, certainly not least, and hopefully not even close to the last, is the Inn at 5th Street that has started construction. And while this picture is beautiful, I think all of us thought the sight of the cranes in downtown was probably the most beautiful thing we've seen in a long time. This building, or this hotel, is in the northwest corner of the 5th Street Market and is, most of us know that area by where the old Nike store used to be. So they remodeled that section of the hotel and then added on. We helped with this project. We helped them leverage over $11 million by providing $600,000 out of our business development fund. And this will be having hotels in downtown helps us increase the size of events and different things we can bring to our core. I'm just going to bump this up. So there's been a number of positive benefits, not the least of which is these projects represent over $83 million of investment in our downtown in a time when those things just aren't happening all over the country. There's at least 400 construction jobs that have been created and probably well over 200 permanent jobs that have been created. And lots of great things are happening as a part of it. So there's new life coming. This is the Ball, I think it's Circle and Ball Antique Store. We've all seen Voodoo Donuts. We have the Cowfish. Improvements to the Jazz Station, and very recently the introduction of Pipeworks software where they moved their their business downtown. So people are starting to say this is a place we want to be and invest in, and that's really, sorry about that, Pete. Really exciting news. On the horizon, we hope that our next big project will start to bring housing downtown. We're really, I think a lot of people know that starting to increase housing and residency in our core is important and will really increase the vibrancy. It's challenging to get those financed at this time, so we're just working on those.
All right. I'm Pete Kearns, Eugene Police Chief. You might remember that about 18 months ago, we had a downtown safety task team made up primarily of business owners and residents and people who live and work downtown, who prepared a variety of tactics that they presented to the executive team as recommendations for improving safety downtown. We brought that to the City Council, and the City Council approved what's known as the 12-point plan, and these are four of the components of the 12-point plan. The first was an analysis of the downtown public safety zone, which was conducted this last year, and will be under review again. The review will begin this winter. It included the implementation of the advocacy program for people who were under the potential of exclusion in the downtown area. The addition of certain offenses that had not been included in the first version of the ordinance, and then a tie to the state statute and municipal code. So it both tidied up the ordinance and provided for more support for people who may be unaware of what their rights were under the ordinance. And then this summer, our focus in the downtown is to improve livability by focusing on behavior crimes and property crimes, and our data-led policing is a significant component of this. We're seeing an increase in pretty visible gang activity both downtown and in the West University neighborhood, so we're giving considerable attention to that right now. An important part of managing the crime that occurs downtown is knowing what to measure, and a number of very smart questions that we've heard from the Budget Committee this year is to ask how we know we're being successful with the funding that we're using. It's hard to know when we're improving the condition around behavior crime, so we are trying to find innovative ways of measuring it, which is very challenging for us. It's probably the most challenging crime to understand. But we've got an online reporting mechanism, and we'll be rolling that out more aggressively to the community so that we can have accurate reporting from them. We'll be putting equipment into the hands of the security and police personnel who work downtown so that they can provide data on that. And based on that information, we will carefully focus the police officers and security people that we have downtown. And then there's also a Senate bill that would enable the City of Eugene to establish alcohol impact areas where we could control the types of alcohol sold in certain areas. And we've seen here that it's been very effective when fortified wine and malt beverages are not sold in neighborhoods where behavior crime is high. A large part of last year's budget for the police department included the establishment of a downtown team that will have 7 officers, a sergeant, a community service officer. We have for many years had 2 full-time officers assigned downtown, so they will stay, or at least those full-time employee positions will remain, and then we'll add the others in. The first 3 of the 7 new officers were hired in September, and they'll be fully trained by this December. They'll go into the workforce, and 3 veteran officers will be assigned to the downtown team. We'll be up to 5. And then this May, we hired the remaining 4 of the new 7 officers, and they will be fully trained by July of 2012, and 4 veteran officers at that time will be assigned full-time to the downtown team. At the beginning of this month, April, we assigned a sergeant to the team to begin working with businesses and finding solutions to the crime problems downtown. So by July 2012, the team will be fully staffed and operational and in a substation in the downtown core, hopefully in the LCC building when that's finished. And then the Cahoots contract, I know that this was a subject of some questions last night, and I'm happy to try and answer any that you may have about how this money is being spent. But in 2011, the Cahoots contract that we've had for many years ran at about $288,000. And that figure includes the contract with Whitebird and fleet and other costs. And by fleet, that includes the maintenance of the vehicle and radio. We only funded 6 months of operation in FY11, so that $202,000 includes the contract, which involved the training of the new employees at Whitebird to staff the van, and the purchase and upfit of the new van, and then the $528 is the insurance. The reason that the figure for FY12 is $600, that's just our best projection of what we think the entire cost of the program will be for the two vans operating 7 days a week. You'd think it'd be 288 times 2, but the range is the potentially between that and about $602,000, $603,000. So we've given ourselves room to be able to fund the project in FY12. I hope that answers your questions about that. The contract is a flat rate that we have with Whitebird, and we will hire a van for extra services. So on Halloween, we may have the van run during hours that it normally doesn't run. That would cost a little bit more. During the BCS championship game, we had the van out there when it normally wouldn't have been running. And that's about the best explanation I can provide for you right now on why the expense is what it is, what it's anticipated to be in FY12. This graph shows that between February 13th and April 30th of 2010, the calls for service answered by the one Cahoots van were 747 calls. During the same period in 2011, it was 925 calls for the van that we'd had and that crew, and then an additional 734 for the new van. And when I say new van, they're actually using the backup van while the new one is going to be upfitted, so they're not as available for calls. There's some calls they can't handle with the backup van that they've had. When the new van is fully upfitted in FY12, then we'll probably see 2 times 925 calls for service. But essentially, that's 1,659 calls from February through April that without Cahoots would have been handled by police officers or firefighters on medic units. It costs something less than $15 an hour for every person for the staff assigned to the Cahoots van, and considerably more than that. The lowest paid police officer salary is more than $25 an hour. So it's a pretty smart, from my perspective, it's a pretty smart business application to have Cahoots personnel handling calls for service that should be handled by that professional rather than by a firefighter or a police officer. It costs a lot less. It's far more humane approach, and it frees up our police officers and firefighters to do other emergency work, and in my case, to help towards reducing crime, reducing property crime and behavior crime. You know that we have added a contract with Springfield for 10 jail beds, and that's the cost of the projected cost in FY12 for those 10 beds. About 36 prisoners spent a total of 256 days in those jail beds during the partial year, and that includes crimes of theft and criminal mischief, menacing, trespass, drunk driving, reckless driving, and violation of the downtown public safety zone. You ready to move on?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm Renee Gruby. I'm the director of the Library, Recreation, and Cultural Services Department. And the third piece of our efforts downtown revolves around art, culture, and entertainment. And just to kind of build on what Sarah talked about around the goals, these are the strategies that we're striving for in affecting change downtown or adding to the safety side of life in the downtown. So one thing we really are focused on doing is increasing positive activities to hopefully displace some negative behavior. It is our goal to integrate arts and culture into the fabric. It's already a strength that we've heard over and over and we know exists. So we want to build on that. We want to enhance the physical environment, and you'll see we'll talk a little bit about the public art component and some of the other activities that we're trying to do to actually make it a more pleasant physical environment. Creating a sense of place through partnerships. We've created, through the activities that we're doing, we've developed over 55 new partnerships that didn't exist 2 years ago on efforts downtown. And then lastly, but not leastly, to contribute to the economic health and viability of downtown. All of this under the premise that access to services and to people of all incomes is one of the core values. The strategies we developed, we didn't just create based on what we know. We pulled them from all the plans, the downtown plan, the cultural policy review, the Parks, Recreation, Open Space Plan, the Public Art Master Plan. All of these plans talk about these strategies as things that we should be pursuing. So I wanted to just give you kind of a baseline for the number of events. And I'm showing you two pieces. This does not include activities at the library or the Holt Center. These are activities that are downtown in the parks blocks, mostly outdoor activities that are occurring. The red bar are activities that are managed by Beth Little through the Saturday Market. And the type of activities, the farmers market, the Saturday Market, Eugene Celebration, those are included in the red number. The Saturday Market is considered one event. So if they meet 33 times, it's considered one actual event. So as you can see, in 2008, the blue piece was 0. Through recognizing this was a strategy that we wanted to pursue, during our last couple budget cycles, we've reorganized within the division and repurposed funds that we were using to present shows at the Holt Center that weren't reaching the number of people we were hoping we could reach and were less accessible. So we repurposed, reorganized within the division to create a team of Billy Mosier, who you've met, our community events manager, and Isaac Marquet, who are leading activities downtown, and as you'll see during other times of the year. But if you put this blue box on top of the red box, you'll see a significant increase. One of the strategies, we're doing this, oops, I got that thing going too. One of the strategies is the Summer in the City Downtown, which occurs on Wednesdays for 9 events over the summer. This year, the first kickoff event is June 22nd, which will be, the event will be a 1-year out launch for the Olympic track and field trials. But it's family-friendly, fun, exciting, all kinds of activities. You can see this is, I believe, Satin Love from last year. And people are really drawn to these activities. And you'll see here the attendance as it's growing. In 2008, it was pretty much nothing, and it's grown almost 50% from 2009, and we anticipate that that'll continue to grow. We're hoping for families. It's a fun, family-friendly. We also like to keep employees downtown. You might recognize a couple of these. One maybe sitting over here behind you in the glasses, and another here with the killer headband. To my left. As you can see, people are having a lot of fun, a lot of diverse activities. It isn't just music, but it's family-friendly activities, including activities for youth. This was a skateboard activity that I know Councilor Clark maybe participated in. I don't know if he got on a board, but his son.
Nope.
That's Councilor Clark.
Nope. Son did, not me.
And it actually occurs day and night. This is a film noir project that brings people. We're hoping to keep people downtown, so they'll help encourage a safe environment, but also patronize the businesses downtown. For the 2011 lineup, we're going to have a June 8th press conference at 8th and Willamette. There will also be an unveiling of a temporary art piece on the parkade in partnership with ePark that Sarah mentioned earlier, that is a partnership with Copic markers, ethos, Nikonsi beer that will also help kind of liven up the physical atmosphere. This is not Pete on the runway. We talked about that the other day. But it is a fashion show, which is one of the events that happens. Oh, it looks like John? Yeah. Okay. Well, you can insert whoever you like, but it is not. This is one of our. So it is, the activities that we're promoting downtown are not just summer activities. It is called Summer in the City, but Billy and Isaac are working very hard on events that will move us into the winter so that it isn't just a seasonal benefit. 3 things that they have in the works, not fully confirmed, but for your eyes, is a suburban projections project with the university they're working with, which would do digital art basically projected on buildings. It's a really, when you see how that progresses down the road, you'll want to be there and see this. They're also planning a holiday event, Halloween parade and events that will be trick-or-treating, models in windows, various things in October 29th. And also the winter holiday event is all about wreaths, which all of these, so the last 2 are being presented in partnership with downtown businesses. So again, trying to liven up, make a more inviting environment downtown, recognizing what the strengths are. So I mentioned the physical built environment is really important. We have a number of public art pieces. I mentioned the piece on the right, which is where the new piece of art will go. You'll see the unveiling for the Eugene a Go-Go ad. And this, I think, looks right outside of Councilor Clark's window.
Window, right there, right on.
We'll also be doing a number of public art restoration projects, cleanings, including the Storyteller, which is the Ken Kesey piece there at, we call it, a lot of people call it Kesey Plaza, Broadway Plaza, on and on. And we'll also be doing some work on the Four Seasons piece and the Wind Rain song, which is next to the Hilton. And then lastly, one of the partnerships that we think are really important is the Arts and Business Alliance, which is the partnership between the City of Eugene, University of Oregon, Wayne Community College, Eugene Chamber of Commerce, and Travel Lane County. One of their goals is to contribute to the economic health and livability of our community, and in particular downtown. They are working specifically on the creation or moving forward of an arts and culture district. There will be a meeting within the next month or so, bringing business owners, downtown business owners together, artists, others interested in how this might look downtown. So more on that as we come, but that's a significant piece that will help stimulate some of the economic development we're hoping to achieve. So with that, I'm going to send it to Sarah, which you might recognize this event downtown. So this is our last slide, and we just put it in as just a memory and a goal of having a downtown that people are excited to come down and visit, that we're having events that, we've shown you a lot of them tonight that reach out to lots of different types of community members, but that it's a welcoming, safe place for people to come. We think the strategies are effective and we're moving in the right direction, but I think all 3 of us wanted to acknowledge that our work is not done. It's definitely not perfect, and if you walk across downtown during certain times of the day in certain places, it can be very frustrating. We continue to hear about that from people, so we don't want to walk away from this thinking that we have a totally rosy picture, but we do think things are moving really positively in the right direction and that we're investing in the right places. So this is the goal. I think transportation might want some cars to get through there, but this is our goal. So anyway, with that, we'll just open it up to questions.
Great. Thank you very much. So we'll start a queue. Folks who have questions, comments. And Councilor Ortiz, you're first.
Thank you. Thank you guys for this presentation. It was very well-rounded, and it doesn't talk just about the public safety aspect, is what we always hear about. It's good to see the other things that are going on in the content of each other. I just wanted to make a couple comments about cahoots for the public and maybe some of the folks on the budget committee that don't really know the level of education and dedication the Cooters, as we call them, have. There's a lot of them who have masters in social work. They're always, I'm pretty sure that one has to be a medic, and the other one is usually a mental health specialist of some aspect. So when we're using them to help the clients in the community, it isn't that we're not offering them a less than service. They're trained to deal with certain situations, and so I really, I'm glad to see that they're being utilized as much as they are. I think they do a really good job, and I know they're really dedicated groups of people. I know that it's going to be a challenge. People think that it's a challenge because with the social service agencies having to cut back and to not be as available for places to take these folks, that's going to be challenging. But I think that Cahoots does a really good job with what they're charged to do.
Anything else? Okay. Councilor Zelinka.
Pete, the alcohol ban area, SB 764, what's the status of that?
It is moving along. It's still, it hasn't been approved yet, but it looks hopeful.
Looks hopeful?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be an important tool to have.
It would be very helpful, I think.
Ability to deal with behavioral problems, to be able to ban certain types of malt liquors and things like that. And then all the other funky alcohol beverages. There's some out there that are, what, five beers in one can worth of alcohol with caffeine. It's like a really good mix. Second question is about Cahoots. I appreciate Cahoots a lot and what Councilor Ortiz was talking about. I think it's a great program. It is very cost effective. One of the things that Safe and Sound Project used to do is an outreach to homeless at-risk youth, and with trained professionals to go out there and deal with those kids. Obviously, the kids that are hanging out on the mall, for instance, aren't coming into the system. You have to be outreach and pulled into the system with trained professionals. And I'm wondering, with the level of people that are on Cahoots, is there a way of training them or giving them more access to be able to do that kind of outreach as well, to maybe pick up some of the stuff that we saw through the Safe and Sound Project?
They are trained to do that outreach, and that is part of the proactive work that they already do. They use their unobligated time to interact with people on the street who look like they need to be connected with services. Both the police department and Whitebird are, now that we have two well-functioning vans in operation, are asking themselves how we can most effectively do that work. And they are interested in talking about how we can improve the lives of the homeless people or the disenfranchised youth that hang out downtown. And so, yeah, I think that's exactly the next step that we should take with it.
Yeah, I'd like to see that happen.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councilor Taylor.
Thank you. First, you said there's more gang activity. I'm wondering how you identify gang members. Is it by what they're wearing or the colors they're wearing? Or?
The people who participate in gangs identify themselves as members of the gang, and they behave in certain ways. They commit certain crimes, and they sometimes wear certain clothing. So it's through a combination of all those characteristics that we learn that someone is a member of a street gang.
But if they're wearing red, you don't automatically assume that they're...
One of those features alone would not indicate that a person is in a street gang.
And you said one of the reasons for jail time is violation of the safety zone. Is that what you said?
Yes,
That means if someone's been excluded and they come back
that's right.
and they go to jail?
Sometimes. And Counselor, if I didn't make it clear, these are sentenced offenders, so these are people who are sentenced for those offenses by a judge.
If they weren't sentenced to serve time, they're just sentenced to be excluded, or what?
No, they were excluded by a judge, and then they violated that. Police officer arrested them. They were charged with violating the downtown public safety zone exclusion, and a judge sentenced them to jail.
But the crime then is being downtown.
Yes. in violation of the exclusion ordinance.
Okay. I wonder if there's any thought, a lot of these things sound really good, but is there any thought of returning the tables and chairs to Kesey Square?
I think the vendors on Kesey Square have their own tables and chairs, and they prefer it that way, because then they have control over who uses them.
Yeah, I know they do, but downtowns that are really lively have places to sit where people can sit and talk to other people and even move chairs to make different size groups and so forth. And I was really disappointed to see us move those things out of the way. I know downtown Denver is one example I've seen where there are just lots of chairs, and it isn't that you have to sit straight forward beside one person. You can move a chair, you see some friends. It's like you're being in a friendly place. And I'd really like to see us have places for people to sit in.
I think we share that ultimate goal of having that type of furniture and availability downtown. That's really ultimately what we're all working towards.
But won't it get friendly faster if they have a place to go? I don't know which comes first, but
That hasn't been our experience.
Okay, I guess that's all my questions for now. I understand about alcohol. I understand not wanting this fortified alcohol, but if there was a place to buy wine and sit on the mall and have a glass of wine, I think it would be, again, a very friendly thing and a very sociable thing.
Change our state laws.
So,
Anything else? Okay.
thank you.
Councillor Farr.
Thank you. Downtown Kansas City has tables and chairs too, but I'm not going there.
Did you not see?
A couple of questions. One regarding the Ken Kesey piece. Can you tell me who the artist was on that? It's a beautiful piece.
I don't.
And just you can respond later on that.
I'll have to get back to you.
My second question on that was, is it a local artist?
I believe it is. I want to say it's Pete Hilver, but I don't want to go on record as that is the. I just went. Check that.
Might be.
It might be.
For the record. I'd compare that to the wonderful piece of art outside the Sheldon Fire Station, which was not done by a local artist. I'd love to see it when local artists are providing the art in our town. We have lots of talent here in town. Second is a couple regarding cahoots. The responses in 210 were 747 responses up to 1659 with two vans. So that's 120% more responses. Is that accurate?
Yes. Well, are these numbers accurate?
Well, I'm sure they are. But is there anything I'm missing there? I mean, it's just a straight 747 up to 1659 responses.
Yes. Yeah, and I think what this represents is that the demand has been great, but we've only been able to address so much of it because we've only had one van.
And would you estimate that people were not being served then prior to that van being in place? I mean,
They weren't being served by cahoots. If they were being served, it was by police or firefighters.
And you'd mentioned $15 an hour approximately to compare to $25 an hour for a uniformed police officer.
Yes.
Doing a little bit of math on that, 1,659 is about $240 per response with a $492,000 expenditure and 1,659 responses. So a lot more than obviously just the people responding go into that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
In terms, well, sure. With the cahoots response, if two people respond, which is true with police and firefighters too, I believe. The cahoots, this is just salary, what I've represented to you today. And of course, the expense is much greater than that. It includes the fleet and the materials and the services provided by the hospital or the social service agency that the individual served is taken to. Police expenses are also far greater than that because they involve benefits and police vehicles and all the equipment associated with those.
And that was only 2 months, too.
That's correct. This isn't the whole year. This is just 2.5 months.
So the $492 includes cost of the service providers at the destination?
No. No, if your math is only based on that $15 an hour per staff person, no, it doesn't include that.
No, that's just a 1659.
Oh, okay.
I'm just fishing for where the additional expense is beyond staff.
I'm not sure I'm following you, Counselor.
Well, it's
Oh, beyond, you're talking, are you going back to the
$15 an hour
contract?
equates to about 15 hours per response. But I guess I'd like to hear what the expenses are beyond staff that go into the $492,000.
The annual expense per van is roughly $288,000. And so you've doubled that, and is that what you're?
I think I get what you're getting at. We'll have to get back to you on the number, but what I'm understanding is we have a contract for $600,000, essentially what goes into that, and I think what you're doing the math and saying it equates to so much per response. You know, what is beyond sort of the $15, because you do the math and it's more than $15.
What costs $200?
Right, so we'll have to get back to you on that.
Well, a very quick answer for that is that the total annual expenditure for this includes the contract with Whitebird and fleet expenses, and that's essential in the insurance. And the $15 an hour is just because I didn't want to share with you what the hourly rate is of the people that work on the Cahoots van. So that's not a very safe figure to work with, but that's how it's calculated. We don't work out all of what Whitebird's expenses are that go into that contract.
Okay, that's all for now. Thank you.
Councilor Polling.
Thank you. Actually, I had some questions also about the statistics on the number of responses by Cahoots. Just van one alone, there's an increase. Is there any indicators on what's creating that increase? Or is it just the current economic climate or conditions that we're faced with, or is there any way of tracking that?
I could only speculate, but I can look into it and try and find out why it went up this year.
Okay.
If you like.
And then, great presentation, a lot of positive energy behind it, and basically, the way I look at it, all three of these different sections are kind of interrelated and moving each other along, and I think it's great. But Renee, you're right, there's, that's the positive side. I'm still hearing complaints from people about the negative side, so there is still a lot of work to be done, but I think with what we've got going now, once the current construction is all done, I think you're going to see a real positive upswing in the activities in the downtown area, and I'm excited about it. It's been a long time coming, and I appreciate the energy that you folks are putting into it, and bringing all these reports back to us to let us know, because we all have our kind of like all of us have our own special interests, and sometimes we tend to lose track of what else is going on. So it's a good thing to hear this type of report, and again, I like the way that they're all three kind of helping each other move along, and it's just a real positive attitude toward the downtown now.
All right, I put myself in the queue. I had questions about the Cahoots van as well. So these numbers are citywide responses,
Yes,
right? Not
they
just
are.
downtown.
That's right.
And would it be possible to get a breakdown of how the calls play out in terms of that downtown core map versus rest of the city? I think that would be informative. And then you mentioned a backup van that Cahoots uses. Who's responsible for maintaining that?
The police department's responsible for ensuring that these vehicles are maintained by fleet. And I think in some cases the Cahoots personnel coordinate directly with fleet, but more often than not we're involved in that.
So just like the one van and the additional van that we're purchasing, we are paying for them. Through our contract with them, includes
There's the
maintenance on the
contract,
backup.
that's one, I'm sorry. Yeah, the contract is one figure, and then fleet is in addition to that. The 288 is the combination of those two expenses, the contract plus the vehicle expense.
City vehicle, city maintain, city responsibility, then we contract with Whitebird to provide the personnel.
Gotcha.
Right.
So there's actually three vans, two that are fully equipped and one that can't accommodate all the kinds of calls that they might need to respond to.
Yes.
Okay. And then you mentioned, you're using the data-led policing to help prioritize, where you allocate resources and such around the city. And so I'm wondering if you're going to be applying that same strategy to the Cahoots and the hours of operations for Cahoots, because you mentioned 7 days a week for both vans, which is great, but also seems like a lot of coverage. So I just wanted to know how the data-led policing would inform the dispatch of Cahoots.
Well, we'll use the data from the calls for service and how they're able to be used for those, and then what we know about behavior crime downtown and the people involved in it.
And then my other question had to do with our contract with the Springfield Jail, and just wondering if you've been satisfied with how that's worked out. I imagine there's a little more in terms of transporting folks over there and going back and forth to the courthouse and that kind of thing, and just in general how that's been working.
Well, from the police side, it's working very well and has created virtually no extra work for us. Jeff Perry's here from Municipal Court, and he could probably answer more details than that, but I believe we've used the beds at about an 80% rate since we signed the contract.
Hi, I'm Jeff Perry. I'm the court administrator. And Pete's right, the beds have been very useful. It took us a little while to adjust our sentencing practices where we could utilize them because they are limited. They're only for healthy male prisoners. And so it took several months before things started moving forward. But now we're really seeing the benefit. We've had a few weekends where it's actually offset enough at the Lane County Jail that we haven't seen anyone released due to capacity because we're able to move people over to Springfield. So, and I think it's going to continue to decline the use of those beds as we move forward. I just talked to the captain at the Springfield Jail the other day, and we're working on some statistics. It's challenging the way they track statistics. It's kind of a manual process, to be honest. But I think on average we're right around eight prisoners in their bed, and I see those numbers going up. So.
Great, thank you. Shanda.
Thank you for the presentation. I think it was very informative, and thanks for looking at developing performance measures, and I recognize the challenge in doing that. And hopefully you can do that to get some baseline data so that as we move forward you can kind of see how hopefully things will improve over time. Just some questions. I was a little bit confused on the new downtown patrol team. So what's the total officers for when the full team is in place? Was that 7 or?
There will be, when the team is completely staffed, there will be 9 patrol officers and a sergeant CSA.
Okay, thank you. Also had a question, if you could just give a brief definition of behavioral crime. I think I have an idea of what that means, but what are the types of behavioral crimes?
It's trespassing, criminal mischief, assaults, disorderly conduct, urinating in public, those graffiti, that kind of thing.
Thank you. One thing that I've been noticing maybe the last year is that there's more food carts around. Has that been something that's been part of the downtown efforts, and how's that going? I noticed it seems like there's more and more all the time that I'm seeing.
That's managed by Saturday Market, Beth Little, but I can anecdotally say I don't know that they're increasing in the Broadway Plaza area.
No, yeah.
But around, I think it is. It's becoming a more viable, I think, business model. They've struggled, I think, a little bit in the Plaza area, so that number kind of fluctuates. But it is a good addition, for sure.
Has there been any discussion lately? I know there was in the past, or any progress on an indoor farmers market structure? I know there was some talk or some hope of some people that might get created? I don't know.
Might let Sarah answer that.
So there was, in the last urban renewal plan, downtown plan, there was $500,000 allocated, up to $500,000 for permanent improvements for the farmers market and the park blocks. And so we're working through that right now. I can tell you that the number one issue that the farmers are facing is that they need more space. And so what we're trying to do right now is figure out a good place for them now in a transition and come up with a permanent plan that would hopefully include that. I mean, you know, $500,000 doesn't go a long way in terms of creating a big permanent structure, but I think that's people's goal. So stay tuned.
Looks like that's all I had. Thanks.
Okay. John?
Thank you for the presentation. Chief Kearns, would you say that the Cahoots van is an important piece of your downtown public safety plan?
It is, yeah, one of the important elements of it, yes.
And does it free up officers for other types of calls?
Yes, it does.
And I don't know if we have fire here, but you alluded that it also frees up EMS and fire people from other calls that they would have.
Many of these are calls that medic personnel handle.
So I guess what I'm getting to here is it seems like the Cahoots van is a very important part of public safety, of the policing, of the fire department, and of mental health. Yet I see it being 100% being funded out of the HSC budget. And I don't know if that seems like it should be that way. I mean, last year we took, it historically had been, and then we bumped it up, and now the full $600,000 is coming out of HSC's budget, when it seems like a lot of the work that is being done benefits our police department, our fire department, as well as our mental health thing. It seems to me that we might want to look at a matrix, kind of like how every department pays to central services for the services provided. Perhaps some of the budget for the Cahoots van should come out of police, some of it should come out of the fire department, and some of it should come out of human services. Right now, we're funding it 100% out of the HSC budget that we're putting in. We're dedicating the $600,000 of the $1.2 million from HSC. None of the money for the Cahoots is coming out of your budget. Is that correct?
Well, we have the original contract, which the police department has funded since the 80s.
So the 100% of the budget's in the police department budget.
It's in our. That's correct.
I can speak to that. The original van number one budget was $250,000, and then for fiscal year 12, actually it panned out to $225,000. So actually, the police general fund budget is subsidizing it by $125,000.
So the dedication that is coming, that we saw yesterday, that the HSC is funding, where is that? I'm confused.
All $600,000 is general fund.
Right.
So it all sits in the police budget.
Okay.
And what it used to be, last year, we're repurposing what was some of those one-time HSC monies were also what were general fund dollars. We just repurposed those, extended the contract in Cahoots. The first van was always in his budget. The second van is now in his budget also.
And that's the piece that was the repurposing from
Right.
the one-time HSC money.
Right. It's all general fund dollars. It has been.
But you're half right.
Let's get fire to kick some in.
They can. It's still general fund dollars. So, it's the same money, just.
All right. Thank you.
Anything else, John?
Not in this topic.
Councilor Zelinka, I have you for the second round. Okay, because Councilor Clark hasn't had a chance to speak yet.
Thank you. I appreciate all the presentations very much. I'm really impressed with the level of work in each of the three areas by certainly the three of you, but all of the staff involved. I appreciate the work, the dedicated work to enhance the built environment with parking and make it more welcoming, and to do so much more with public safety downtown, and certainly with the activities to make it lively and to make it a more fun place to be. As someone who, having seen from the picture, looks out on that view from his office every day, I know that the downtown still has some public safety issues. I know that what my neighbors there call the population of travelers who come into our community during the course of the summertime has already started at what many call record numbers this year. And I know that, Chief, you have a wonderful solution, but it's more of a long-term solution with the new officers that are coming online, and it won't probably be until after the summer is complete. Do I have that right?
That's right.
Okay. One of the things that I think it's accurate that everybody should try with each department to try to bring down the level of expenses, and the 1.8 from everybody was good. But I have a real concern with taking that 1.8 across the board from first responders. And in this case particularly, I guess I'd ask, with an eye towards giving me the information later, and what sort of thing you would suggest you might need in the way of resources to, I know it's predominantly personnel that you need, and that's tough to get in the amount of time, but if there are resource issues that would help you address the downtown issues even at an accelerated pace, I'd certainly like to know that because I'd like to advocate for that. Okay? So if there are things beyond what you have allocated to this point that you think may be helpful in solving that problem or being more forceful with it, I'd like to know that. Can I have a super round in this particular time? Okay. And so if you're able to identify any particular resources that would help you with some of those particular pieces, I'd like to know. And then I guess I would say as well, with the activities we had downtown last year, I think Billy mentioned to me that once again we're going to have the dodgeball tournament in conjunction with the Susan G. Coleman Foundation, and I saw Sarah's picture there. I think last year the staff fielded at least 2 different teams for the dodgeball tournament down there. I'd like to organize one for council and staff and budget committee members, so I challenge each of you. I think it's, a 5-6 person team. Anybody who wants to join me? John's already wearing pink. I think we could field a team, and I invite you to join me. So thanks.
Can I just mention a little bit? Pete will get you some more details around your request. One of the things that what the council did last year was say the way to address downtown was through that 12-point plan that Pete talked about. And I believe all 12 of those plans, all of that is actually moving forward and is fully funded in the budget, right, as we're moving forward. The pieces that we said we were picking up with the increased folks, jails, the downtown work crew, the Cahoots vehicle. So that is, all of that's fully funded in the budget. Is the plan that we all agreed on before is fully funded.
My request was really around what we might do to expedite or to kind of patch the hole that we will have this summer. Right. I mean, everybody down there kind of knows that it's a wonderful plan that we've all agreed to, but it won't come in time for this summer, and we may need some creative solutions to deal with that. And so I'd just like to be a part of helping if there's any way we can.
It's also important to know that we still have our summer temporary downtown patrol. We have that every summer, so we've gone from the 2 officers that we have year-round to 6 for the months of April through September. So we still have that added patrol for the summer months this year.
Okay. Well, I know that we have Senate bills. Lastly, I suppose I'll say, I have high hopes that we'll have Senate Bill 764 passing during this legislative session, and so we'll have at least the capacity to create or to petition to create an alcohol impact area. And I don't know what may or may not be required with regard to any additional resources to implement that fully, so or additional jail beds if they become necessary to rent even more from Springfield or whatever may be the case. So I'd love to know ideas that may help patch that hole.
Okay. So moving into round 2, I've got Councilor Zelinka, and then Polling, and then Ortiz. So Councilor Zelinka.
So that's only 2.5 months. Can we extrapolate that out and just say to increase that to be a full year? So is it a seasonal? Is it seasonal or is it pretty consistent?
I haven't charted it out over the course of a year, so I'd be guessing, but I do know that crime goes up in the summer months, so I'll bet that activity for Cahoots goes up during those months too. Crime in Eugene climbs in the summertime, yes.
Right, more people are outside. Okay. I did want to comment about parking. There is no such thing as free parking, but in the answer to the May 5th, in a question about how did parking fund show a 10% increase in revenue when we did free parking downtown, I didn't understand the last sentence here where it said the estimated parking fund investment in a 12-block expanded on-street free parking program in downtown was $440,000 over 2 years. That's the foregone meter revenue and the signage to do it. So that's the cost was $440,000.
Yeah, $220,000 a year.
Sure. And the reason we actually saw an increase is because we shifted cost of who pays that from downtown to around the arena and campus by increasing their rates and doing that system.
And I think number of meters, we increased the total number of meters also.
Right, the number of meters increased dramatically. So we just shifted who pays for it to partially students in large part. But, okay, just to make sure that that's clear, because there's no such thing as free parking. It just got shifted somewhere else. That's it.
Okay. Councilor Polling?
Well, earlier John was saying how the police and fire departments benefit from the $600,000, but not only do they benefit by freeing up the officers, but the merchants downtown benefit from it. The common everyday person wandering around downtown, but the real person that benefits from this the most is the person that's being attended to, and we cannot lose sight of that. That despite the other agencies within the city that are being freed up, that person that's getting the attention at that time is the true benefactor of the program. And then I got a couple of questions about the jail beds. Is that the projected $300,000, is that for the entire year despite what the occupancy rate is, or is it at the end of the year, say if we only run like a 50% occupancy, do we get some of that money back, or how does that work out?
That's a projected amount because the contract is based on actual usage. So if we were to fill 10 beds per day for the entire year, it's actually around 275,000 at the current rate. And based on what I've been told so far, it looks like the rate shouldn't change for FY12. So, but it's important we have a little bit of cushion in there just because the way the contract's structured, it can fluctuate up and down. So.
And we're still leasing beds from the county jail also? Is that 15 or is that 20 beds?
We have 15 beds at the county and then the 10 additional beds at Springfield.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Ortiz?
Thank you. So now we're going to have a work session in the future on car camping. But, when I heard Councilor Clark offering more support for downtown, that's not the only area that has crime and has issues. The Whitaker and Train Song are sorely lacking in a lot of stuff, and they just deal with it. There's a different level of tolerance for people. So, Chief, I wanted to check in to see, at one point, the bike patrol went up as far as Monroe Park. Are they still going to incorporate that into their patrol?
Their primary focus is in the downtown core, and then as activity adjusts, which it always does, to the parks, they spend time there too.
Okay.
And this is the summer team that I'm talking about. So when we establish the full-time downtown team, they'll work the same way.
Okay, so it'll go where the crime goes, is what
Exactly.
is what I think I'm hearing you say.
Yes, that's what you're hearing.
Because I know we did an alcohol impact zone over in the Whitaker for as a temporary. Is that still in place, or are we going to, or did that go away?
They're not all complying with that. As I recall, they're not all presently complying with the ban.
So if this House bill passes, then we will have the right to say, clear that off your shelves, and you may not sell this in a designated area?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I hope it does, because I know that really does impact that community and also the Highway 99 community. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
John?
Just to dovetail on that, one of the, and this is just my personal observances as a business owner on the periphery of downtown is we also have to watch for seepage. You know, when we concentrate our efforts downtown, it moves out. And one of the neighborhoods, you know, I mean, Andrea can attest to the Whitaker neighborhood being impacted. I can attest to the fact that West University is becoming a magnet for some of this activity. And I would hope that if the alcohol ban was put in, that the Circle K on 13th and High would be one of the areas that might be impacted by it. I can tell you many stories, but just to keep going with a little bit of institutional memory and just an update from staff. 2 years ago, this committee passed a motion 13-1, basically asking the city manager to look at excess city properties and the ability to sell those properties and use those monies for public safety. It was a motion put together by Mr. Clark and Mr. Brown. And I'm just wondering, we haven't really heard much about that. I know that there's a lot of excess city properties, one-time monies. Can you give us a little bit of an update on where we're at?
You know, I thought we sent something out a year plus ago to the
Okay. All right.
We never had the work session on it, though.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's the end of the queue for right now. So I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute break and reconvene. If folks have more discussion they want to engage in, we will. And if not, we'll adjourn relatively very early. But so we're adjourned for 10 minutes on a break.
That was an excellent
pretty sure.
What's that?
That was an excellent suggestion.
Have you heard of this?
Reconvene.
Take that as Thank you.
Folks in the kitchen.
Everybody in the peanut gallery, sit down, please.
Now it comes down to
They're ready to go.
5 rounds of Johnny B.
Well, Sarah, I think you should just call it an early meeting.
I make it,
Talking.
you make
Yeah,
me
the
feel like a
microphone's
geek.
on now.
Probably are.
I'm John.
Just in case someone got a brainstorm on the break. So we're going to reconvene.
Well, in this
for a
portion,
few minutes.
I don't have any, other than what I asked. I do have a couple of motions I intend to make, but I don't think we're at the place to make those yet today.
Yeah, we are.
Kind of, you know.
We can talk about them. I'd love to talk about them.
I don't know that we're going to start that just now.
You going to hold them in the...
Well,
close to that.
my plans need to get more fully filled.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
So we did add time to our schedule this evening, just in case we had pressing matters to address or we'd had more public comment. I would not object to adjourning early, but I want to give committee members an opportunity if there are any other thoughts or information requests or ideas about possible intended motions that you wanted to share before we adjourn this evening. John.
So since we're kind of free on time, can we just do this loosely and not be a 154?
No.
We can try that for a few minutes.
So one of the things that I would like to see staff, council, citizen members of the budget committee do. In the past few years, we've looked outside the box. And staff has done a really good job of looking outside the box as far as how to save money and how to fund things that haven't been able to be funded. What I saw in years past, Councilor Zelenka brought it up, back Councilor Bettman was bringing things up, where we were doing fund trades with the county and other agencies. I think this is an area that we ought to, in these tight economic times, we should look at our whole budget, not just the general fund budget. Our whole budget is almost $500 million. We're mainly focusing right now on the general fund, 160 or so million dollars of that. There's a whole bunch of more dedicated funds that are very tied up with a lot of strings, but our strings might be different than what the county's strings are. And so for instance, we have a telecom fund that we're very prescriptive on how we can spend the money in our telecom fund. It's a very well-funded fund, but we can only spend it on certain types of things. Well, maybe the county is spending some general fund money on telecom-type issues. And we can look at that and say, you know what, Lane County, how about if we give you $100,000 to buy this phone system, and you use that general fund money to help fund our human services things? I think that that's something that all agencies need to start looking to and thinking about, because in these times, every dollar counts, and there are different ways of looking at them. We talked about the other day, that gosh, here's a program that would really benefit the community, and we're using general fund monies for it. But gosh, maybe it's a stormwater or a wastewater fund that we can look at. So I think it's real important for all of us to look through the book and have help from staff and say, what can we do? Is there a way to be creative? And I know staff always does that and is looking at that. But I think if we can mingle that out to our other jurisdictions, that would help as well. Councilor Zelenka was talking about, that Springfield has less money going into HSC. Well, maybe we can help Springfield in one of their funds that is struggling, and our fund is tough, and vice versa. So I would hope that staff is working with their counterparts in the other regions to help us think in those types of areas, because I know in the past when we had general fund money that was going to roads, and we gave that road fund money to the county gave us their dedicated road fund money, and they funded jail beds with that. And it made us a safer community, and it got our roads fixed. So I'm hoping that there's opportunities for that we can look into. Whether or not we can get that into this budget cycle, I'm not sure that's the case. But I would hope going forward that we work more closely with our partners in other regional governments. And so I just wanted to put that out there, because there are opportunities, and it is a big budget with areas that we're not even looking at. You know, we're looking at the general fund and the fact that we're real tight. So,
Thank you, John. And actually, you made me think of maybe one small component in that. That's something I meant to ask the chief when he mentioned that they were going to provide reporting equipment to the safety partners downtown, which I would assume would be the red hats and the parking security folks. And I'm assuming that's some kind of electronic equipment or communications equipment, and I don't know. It's probably not a huge expense, but it might be something that could be funded from the telecom fund, or rather than just general fund money. So that's just a tiny thought bouncing off of what you were sharing. Anybody else? Ramin?
Hi. I don't know, sometimes it's like you get in on a plane thinking it's going to, let's say, Los Angeles. You find out you're going to Las Vegas. When I signed up for budget committee, my perception of what I can add value to the process would be to sit with a bunch of other people on the budget committee, not from a political side, but who helped the city and the council to analyze it from a citizen's point of view. What I find, especially last year, I found it was a very patchy interventions. Some people wanted funds here, and we spent a lot of time discussing minute amount of money. And so what I thought would have been, this is not a system, a political, I'm not saying it in a political way, but as a team, I thought a citizens budget team could ask like a school campus. You get a bunch of data from the budget from the city, you go and sit in a room, not in a party, get some information, play with them, and then come with some sort of a recommendation. Option 1, option 2, option 3. And that, of course, the city does a lot of that. But that's what I found that is not happening, or that's what I didn't sign up for. I'm not here to lobby positions that this should have more money or that. I signed up to work with a bunch of people, hopefully with numerical backgrounds, and to come up with some sort of that's what the budget committees call, that's what development committees, some people who bring their expertise to bear. So given this process has come this far, I would have thought that, I don't know how viable that is. John said something yesterday, and sometimes in these committees, you throw this ball and everybody looks at the ball and just the ball drops. Yeah? It's too political. Everybody says, I'm not talking politics, it's just, John was saying a bunch of people sit, get together and do some homework. Because I can read a bunch of these, you can read bunch of this. And instead of that, it's sit and have a plan, and then you make a presentation and give the other part. So I was thinking provides a more informative venue than what it is by its nature. So just out there, another ball to drop.
Well, I think that's a valid, interesting points. Sometimes the ball may look like it's been dropped, and then 3 meetings later, people have picked it up. So for some of us, including myself, it takes time to mull these things over and think through what might be a viable approach to bring forward for everybody else. But I appreciate what you're saying about sitting together and kind of working through. We do have a obligation to do that in a public setting because we are discussing public dollars, so there are public meeting requirements that we have. But some of that work could take place, as we mentioned, based off of what John raised yesterday, within subcommittees. So we have in the past formed citizen subcommittees to look into more depth at particular parts of the budget or programming. And I'm going to be speaking with budget staff about that idea and hopefully come back to you at our next meeting with some ideas that we might want to form a committee or two to work over the next year. So if you have ideas of approaches or particular issues that you might want to explore further within a subcommittee context, and in the past those subcommittees have been with the citizen members, and of course counselors are welcome to participate, but because they already have quite a lot on their plate, we've made in the past those those just with the citizen subcommittee members. So please over the weekend be thinking about ideas or topics that you might want to propose, and if you want to send those in an email, that'd be very welcome as well.
To piggyback on that, I don't know how the result of that, but what I would hope is that as we work through this, we work towards subcommittees, that we also influence which those committees are, because some could be helpful, some, just to be frank, and I understand the committee's interest in sort of participating, absolutely should sort of work through the budget. That's, I think, part of what your charge is. What you have before you represents literally thousands of staff hours. So it's not just, we just kind of frivolously put it together. And so I don't think the committee can recreate the budget. But there are probably places that the committee potentially could be a part of it in a different way, and that could add value to it. And so just as we're going through those conversations, I think we want to help influence those conversations and where we think the value added is for the whole process.
Doug?
Yeah, I just want to quickly talk about the 1.8% reduction. I was happy to read that LRCS will not eliminate a single service area or major program. Facility hours of operation will remain intact. And in saying that, I know probably most everybody here supports that tax measure for schools, whether it passes or not. If it doesn't pass, I pulled up a 2007 from KVAL, and I'm speaking primarily towards the PE programs, and there's a lot of other programs that are going to be cut if that measure doesn't pass. In 2007, District 4J says about PE, many doctors, childhood obesity is on the nationwide, is on the rise, so they were going to set up a program, 4J, to help kids educate themselves at a young age on how to take care of their bodies. Then I pulled up 2011, where a lot of that stuff is going to be cut. I think the City of Eugene, in the facilities that they offer and the programs they offer, can help bridge that gap. It doesn't always have to mean money. It can mean existing programs, existing facilities, and by not closing facilities and programs, I think it can greatly enhance these young kids in this community to get active. And like I said, I'm not saying that you need to introduce new programs, just enhance what you already have. Go out to those partners that we always talk about. I know a program that I'm involved in, and I sent Alan a page on, we're going to give a free clinic to kids at middle-aged schools that they can come in and participate in a program that's going to help them physically and provide some lifelong skills in how to keep physically fit through team sports, individual sports. So I was glad to hear that, and I think I certainly will be more proactive in getting the word out to principals, to PE teachers, if there are any anymore, to get these kids active in city programs. And I appreciate what staff has done to help keep those facilities open and no reduction in hours. That's all.
John?
Since I'm not going to be able to be at the final meeting for motions, and next meeting is going to be fairly full, I am planning to do an intended motion, so I'm just going to kind of talk about that now, and I'll send it out electronically, and hopefully we'll have a chance to vote at it at next Tuesday's meeting. It's very similar to the motion that I did last year. It regards a couple of programs that I feel are of value to the community. One of them is the Enhanced Pothole Program. I think that a lot of the counselors have heard from their constituents about how well received the Enhanced Pothole Program is. Basically what that is doing overlays on some unimproved streets. They're not full rebuilds, but it really improves neighborhoods and the city as a whole, and it's a well-needed thing. The other area that I'm going to piggyback with that is there's a real need for parks O&M, parks operations and maintenance. So what I'm planning on proposing is at the end of the year, the staff does an annual audit, and if there's extra money left over, they add everything up, they pay all their bills, they see what's there, and if there's money left over at the end of the year, it's called the marginal beginning working capital, and the first $900,000 of that is dedicated to the capital transfer, so money that goes for things that are in the CIP, which is well needed. What my motion is going to be is that the first $200,000 over that $900,000 gets split between the Enhanced Pothole and Parks O&M one-time dollars. Because this is one-time money that might be there. If it's there, it's good. It can be used, and it can be used for what I feel is a needed cause. If it's not there, it's not going to be. It's not pulling the rug out of a program or whatever. It would just be enhancing those programs. So at the next meeting, I'll have that written with intent and all that kind of stuff. But if there's people that would like to talk about it now or staff that would like to talk to it, we have a few minutes.
Councilor Clark.
Yeah, I appreciate the motion. I like the idea. I'd like to talk about it some more. It sounds like something I can support. I would only remind that last year we passed a 2-year measure that takes $300,000 from last year's marginal beginning working capital and this next one's after the $900 to set aside for the development of Creekside Park. So I would ask that your motion make sure that you make allowance for that $300.
No problem.
What I think what the motion was is that $300 come out of is the first of the $900.
Yes. It's
$300
dedicated out of the $900.
Out of the $900?
Yeah.
I thought it was in addition to, but okay.
No, yeah, it's the first $300 goes to Creekside.
First $300 out of the $900. Right.
So it's there.
Both years.
I'll take your word for that, sir. Either way, it sounds like it'll take place, and I'm happy about that.
Shonda.
Okay, well, I just have a question about if first 200,000 after the 900,000 did not go to John's proposals, where would that money go? I'm assuming
He's proposing 200.
200,000.
Yeah, $200,000. I'm assuming it would go into
Reserve for revenue shortfall. is where it normally goes, unless it's allocated by council for or staff at the supplemental budget in December.
Okay. If it went into reserve for revenue share, excuse me. I think this goes back to our first meeting where I was getting confused about the different buckets.
Uh-huh.
You've got revenue shortfall and you've got
It goes into
other
essentially what is
reserves.
our savings account. And that money at the savings account becomes the amount of money we sort of start off the next year with, and then we sort of budget from there. In this case, you might remember we're still anticipating a gap in our
Right.
budget in the future, so that would actually go towards closing a piece of that gap in the future.
Right,
Anything
that was
above
my
that,
question.
yeah. So it would get put into that savings account. All of that would go to try to also buy down that gap a little bit.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just saying that, or I'm imagining that if we did use that 200,000, what you're talking about, could impact the choices for the next year's budget in terms of, depending on the economy, if the economy improves, great, maybe the impact won't be too bad. If it pretty much continues the way it has been, could mean that the city continues having to find cuts, and
Right.
so you just have to balance that.
We do have to balance. And kind of my rationale behind it is in the 6 years that I've been on the budget committee and the 8 years that I've been following the budget committee, it's been, we've always gone in, there's no money, there's no money, there's no money. And that's true. I'm not doubting that. And we talk at end's length about a $35,000 budget shortfall for a swimming pool, and $100,000 for here and $100,000 for there, and inevitably, when the supplemental budget comes out, and we find out how much money is left over at the end of the year, it's a lot of times it's enormous amounts of money. This last year's extra money was over $5 million. Now, I don't anticipate that this year because of the 1.8. A lot of those were savings that that John implemented and that the staff took the ball and ran with, and that's why last year's budget was so, difference was so large. And so kind of what my rationale is there are needs, and this is our opportunity as citizen members to say to staff and to council, this is what I think I would like to see our city do with money that is out there. And one-time monies are good for one-time things, and there's lots of one-time needs throughout the city. O&M of parks is one. Streets is one. Ambulance transport is one. There's lots of good uses for one-time monies. And I'm just saying that if there's leftover money, I would like to have my input put out there that this year some of that be used for this one-time thing.
Just a couple. It has been used the last couple of years for sort of some of those things, and some of those have worked well, I think. You might remember 2 years ago, we didn't budget $900,000. We didn't include that because we felt like we needed to do that. The other thing is we have purposely, remember, our strategy was to accumulate cash the last couple of years. So that's partly why you see it building. Our whole strategy was to accumulate enough cash to help us weather through a couple of these financial potholes, which actually has worked. And so that's partly why you would see the greater difference over the last year or two in beginning margin and capital. That was a purposeful strategy to try to do that.
Councilor Taylor?
Two things. First, as much as I like John, I will not be supporting that motion. I don't think we should predetermine what we would spend, if there were extra money, what we would spend it on. We should consider it in relation to other things. Another thing I wanted to say in response to Romaine and to your talk about committees, that now might be the time for some budget committee members to talk about what they would like us to consider for next year's budget. and to make those recommendations to staff and let council discuss those. But it's not a time for, it's not possible to make big changes in this year's budget at this point. And assuming that we had money, I think it'd be very good if you would tell us, what do you think we should emphasize more than we have been? And let us think about those things. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ortiz.
So, couple things, I heard what John was saying about, working with our neighbors. And I started thinking about the county, and do we know how they're going to be set? I mean, are they going to be, have we gotten any ideas of if their budget impacts are going to impact us?
I don't know if Larry's
That's the commissioner.
prepared to talk about that now, or the answer is yes. Larry's and Sue's team have been following it pretty closely. So,
Councilor Ortiz, members of the committee, Larry Hill, I'm a financial analyst with the Finance Division. The county is in the middle of its budget process. In fact, it met last night and is going to meet tomorrow night in work session. The Budget Committee is considering a proposed budget that reduces the general fund of the county by $11 million. They're looking at about a 10% reduction in their general fund. They're proposing laying off 56 FTE and other significant impacts. They also base their proposed budget on significant givebacks through union negotiations, which are in progress, and we don't know what the outcomes would be. If those aren't achieved, there'll be an additional $3 to $4 million cut on top of the proposed budget. So the county's in a significant situation where they're going to have to make some very tough decisions. Some of those decisions may well have an impact on the city.
So would you say that last year, when we came up with some money to keep our jail beds open, is that something that might be happening this year? Do you have a tea leaves you can read or a crystal ball?
I have no way to answer that at this point. There may well be some opportunities to trade, and that's something that we could investigate. I'm sure there's something worth looking into there. But many of the county monies are limited. They're constrained by federal or state mandates. And because our monies might be more flexible in some case, we might be able to obtain some trade that's beneficial to both the city and the county. But the city manager and
So, John, will you come to us with that recommendation, or do you want us to track it?
no, we're tracking it really closely.
Okay.
When you mentioned that, one of the things I was thinking about is I know what this committee has talked about, a couple things that are, I think, important to us from the county's budget. One is their jails. And so maybe there's a strong message coming out of the budget committee for them to continue to fund their jails. I mean, they come and sort of encourage us for certain kinds of things. I think we can also encourage them to continue to fund some things. Buckley House might be another one that we should send. Maybe you as a body choose to ask them to continue to fund those as high priorities as they impact us. So that may be an option in addition to us tracking through it.
Encouraging them to do something and actually putting, skin in the game are two different things. And so what I would want to know is, are we in a situation with any of our funds where we could do some horse trading with them to keep our priorities, i.e. Buckley House, jail beds, any of the social service agencies? Is there any funds that we have that if we could put in the horse trade license, that we would definitely want the monies to go to those things?
We'll continue to look for some of those. 3 years ago it worked really well because we traded general fund, which we were going to, that was $1 million that we were using for road fund. We traded it for road money, which was restricted. Their road fund is underwater, I think, now, too, right? So they don't have that money to do. Telecom was an interesting piece, but a lot of those are restricted. But to answer your question is, yes, we can continue to look for those opportunities. If there are some good opportunities that make sense, then
I think
we may want to come back and propose that.
It's critical to this community.
Right.
It's like part of the three-legged stool concept as far as our social service agencies go. Not to say that the night shelter, Centro Latino, and all those other ones aren't equally as important. But I think Buckley is really, it really concerns me. And I don't know what the dollar amount is that they are looking for.
And I'm not sure they've completely figured that out. From what I understand, they're still wrestling with that themselves.
So I just would want to be encouraged that I would be more than willing to support those kind of efforts. And our road fund looks pretty good.
I think that's a credit to this group.
I
and
mean,
to the
I was
citizens of the
just
community.
looking to see if I could see how much general fund, but then it was saying that we're over budget, or we're not over budget, but we have in your message to us.
Yeah, I don't think there's any general fund in the road fund. Is that true? Yeah, there's no general fund actually in the road fund.
Okay, well, thank you.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you. I agree entirely with Andrea about this. Last year, I brought in a graph that showed the timber revenue receipts being 15 million down this year and probably 15 to 18 million down next year. They're going to go through a substantial change if they don't see some sort of either difference in their tax base or some sort of extraordinary lift at the federal level. I don't expect to see the federal dollars coming through for them. So it will either be significant reductions or it'll be some capacity to increase their base at the local level to increase their revenue stream. I think that will have a huge effect on us. I have for a while, and we ought to be prepared for it. I have probably at least 3 and maybe 4 motions to make. One of them was going to be around Buckley House because I think that's a critical public safety piece. I haven't finished all the details of them, but one will be around the fire personnel for Station 2, another perhaps in consultation with the chief, depending on what comes of it for downtown. So I guess I'll put those out there as reserved spaces here and give you more detail as I get more fully prepared with those. But I think that the county isn't in a position to do a lot of horse trading with funds that were previously set aside for specific uses. They just have run them dry. But it will require some creative thinking if we can come up with it.
Doug.
Question, John. Does the city have a representative in real time that sits down with Lane County Budget Committee or commissioners to talk about the significance or the consequence of their budget decisions, and for a city representative to give input? I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but it seems like that we hear when things happen after they voted on or decided things, and then we like, okay, this is the consequences of their actions, and this is how we're going to adjust. Is there any real-time collaboration that could happen, or is that not appropriate for that body to have?
Appropriate. I think it happens on a couple of different levels. Larry, for example, is working really close with them. He's also working very close with them on the animal services, for example. You might remember from last year's budget. I'm in meetings with Leanne every week, every other week, and some of those conversations revolve around budgets, and I suspect other staff are in other kinds of meetings in the same way.
We don't have an official liaison to their budget committee, though.
Yeah.
And they don't
Right.
have one to ours, so that's...
So is that not appropriate, or is it just not done?
Probably not in
It just seems
I don't know
like
that there's a
breach-
mechanism for it to
Yeah.
happen. I mean, one thing is that they have citizen members of their budget committee, just like we have here, and
I watched it last night.
and a lot of those people live in the city of Eugene, but they're not deciding the city of Eugene's budget. So that's one thing. I mean, other places that contact could happen would be between elected officials, whether formally or informally. So, but I don't think there's been any kind of regular, ongoing, concerted way that that's done. Unless I'm wrong.
Well, I'm not making a recommendation.
Yeah.
Just how that process works out, because what happens there seems to influence us a lot. And just having that liaison, or constant or consistent, would be nice to have, I would think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilor Zelinka.
So following up on that, can we get the preliminary list of potential budget cuts at Lynn County.
Yeah, sure.
Remy?
Couldn't find health center or thing. Is it still in the budget documents?
Should be.
Okay.
Library and recreation, right?
Yeah, it's
Cultural
just-
services, I mean?
Cultural service. That's
Operating or capital?
Sorry?
C-55?
Okay, thanks. Because
Did you have a?
no, but division, no, you know, the ones that they break it out, these sections go to see. It used to be last year was separated also here, you know,
So they're FTE.
FT.
Specifically for the Holt Center?
Yeah, it was last year.
We can have somebody
Okay, I can.
down with you. Or
It's under cultural services now instead of the
Oh,
Holt.
it didn't.
It was called, yeah, but it's a little more than that, so we didn't want to present it as just the Holt Center.
I see, okay.
Did you want more detail?
No, I'm fine now. I just
Okay.
wanted to see. Thank you.
So, hey, look, we're approaching our original adjournment time, and it seems like folks have had a chance
always
to.
have to fill the time out.
Well, we're actually extended to 8:30 officially, but unless someone has some last pressing word that they need to get out there, I'm going to call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
We'll see you tomorrow.